Okay, time for an update on Russian operations within Ukraine itself. So first off, the Russians launched an operation to take the southern city of Odessa. This operation was pushed back, and the Ukrainians retained control over the important city of Odessa. Secondly, and this was one of the earlier moves of the war, the Russians attempted to capture a military airfield outside Kiev. And they did actually capture that military airfield outside Kiev. But as in the case of Odessa, it was retaken by the Ukrainians themselves. So 2 victories by the Ukrainians in Odessa and then in a military airfield outside of Kiev. Thirdly, the Russians have fully surrounded the northeastern city of Mariupol. So this city has hundreds of thousands of inhabitants, are now fully surrounded and besieged by the Russians. Of course, the Russians are claiming that they've established humanitarian corridors to allow refugees and civilians to flee. However, on, Tuesday, 0 civilians were allowed to flee from this area. Absolutely, a grand total of 0 of them got out. City officials are saying they're running out of food and water, and it looks like the Russians are laying a medieval-style siege to the city. I mean, you have bombardments and artillery shells coming in extremely frequently, killing innocent people. You have a maternity hospital that was itself attacked in the city of Mariupol. So, I mean, we're dealing with a potential war crime there, or at the very least, a medieval-style siege in which they're targeting the civilians as well as the military combatants. And the most recent update is that Russia has begun striking airfields in the far western part of the country. And so one might think like, well, why is this? You know, their troops aren't really over there. It's not near the main thrust of the Russian invasion. It's not in the southern coast like Odessa, where the Russians want that area. It's not in the far east. Well, this is something we were talking about earlier. It's the Russians trying to prevent NATO resupply to the Ukrainians. So if some of these airfields are taken out, it's going to be more difficult for all of the supplies that the United States, Germany, Sweden, Britain are sending to the Ukrainians. And on top of that, there's this Polish plan. The Polish plan is to send old MiG-29s, Soviet-era fighters, to the Ukrainians, and that's because Ukrainian pilots are trained on how to fly these things. The Poles have them. The Poles want to sell them to the Ukrainians if they would get some F-22s or F-15s from the United States. This was an interesting proposal because it was originally announced by the media as fact, as happening, and when it was announced, I actually recorded a video praising President Joe Biden for being willing to go along with this thing. But it turns out, and this is how small countries do propaganda, it wasn't an actual deal. The deal was never signed. The deal was never made. The deal was never agreed upon. It was just Poland telling the media that it was already a fait accompli, that it was already a done deal, because Poland wanted to push this thing along. Biden heard about it and said, I never agreed to anything like that. Biden had his State Department come out and say, no, this is not happening. You know, we're not giving or selling the fighter jets to Poland, and we're definitely not allowing Poland to use the Ramstein Air Force Base within Germany to ship those Polish MiG-29s over to Ukraine. So fascinating to see how Poland is trying to use the media to try to get their, to accomplish their goals, really, and, you know, force the hand of a more powerful country like the United States. So that is how your smaller countries do propaganda. They claim, oh, some big country has decided to help us, just to kind of shame that country into going along with it. You actually saw the same type of thing in the proposed closing of the Bosphorus Strait and blocking in of the Caspian Sea. So it was announced by journalists that Turkey had agreed to close the Bosphorus, which is the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea from the Black Sea, thus closing off that area to Russian ships and Russian warships. This was not actually agreed upon. This was total BS. The journalists, I guess, did not, like, check with the Turks. They just believed the Ukrainians when they said that. And so turns out it was just a push by the Ukrainians to try to get the Turks to agree. Absolutely fascinating to see this new sort of method of propaganda, something that I have not seen in history before. It's kind of playing the victim card, or at least saying, like, you don't want to disappoint me. I am the victim country. I am the small country. I am the weak country. You don't want to look like heartless in now coming out and saying, no, we refuse to help. It's kind of like a charity saying, like, oh, this billionaire has decided to donate $1 million to our charity. And then the billionaire's sitting there like, oh, yeah, great. I totally agreed to donate, and he doesn't want to say no just to look bad. But the United States had no problem saying no. So it looks like those fighter jets are not going to be transferred to Ukraine. And while that's happening, the Russians are trying to destroy Western airfields to prevent resupply and advanced weaponry from getting into Turkey. One of the most crucial weapons now would be anti-air systems, especially man-portable anti-air systems. And so that leads me to talking about the role of infantry in this war, which will be discussed in a new video. It is my opinion that we are entering a new age of infantry dominance, where infantry soldiers will be able to take out armor, to take out air power, just with as little as one squad, or as few as 1 to 2 or 3 individuals. So look out for that in a coming video.